Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We've got a major event on the horizon coming up on Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. We have the UAP hearing held in Congress. Its official title is Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. And we all know we are long overdue on protections for whistleblowers. So it's being held at the Capitol Visitors Center, 10 o'clock a.m. It is open to the public. It's first come, first serve. So if you do plan on going, I definitely recommend getting there ahead of time. There's going to be a line, so get there well in advance of when it starts if you want a seat. It's actually going to be in room HVC 210. So that's where it's being held, just coming up in a few days on Tuesday. Looking forward to it. This could definitely be one of the most important public hearings yet on the UAP issue. So what I thought I'd do today is I'm going to walk you through kind of how I think the hearing is going to go. Who's testifying, why it matters, what I think people may testify to, what kind of questions are these representatives going to ask, and not only what questions they're asking, is why they're asking some of these questions. I think that's extremely important to understand what this hearing is intended to accomplish. What could this hearing mean for disclosure as a whole? Um, what are the motives of these Congress people? It's one committee, but many of these representatives have absolute different motives. Finally, how are the cover-up artists handling this, and what do they think about these hearings that are being held? So, we're going to go over all of that. I'm going to touch on all of those issues, but before we do that, please press the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'll read every single comment and respond to them. I love talking about this stuff. That's why I spend so much time doing it. And we want to get this channel seen by more people. So the more you like, the more you subscribe, the more people we can get this message out to. Before any further ado, let's dive right into it. So, how do I want to start? So I guess let's start with the witnesses. So who's testifying at this hearing? So we have four people scheduled to testify. Each brings a different angle to this whole thing. So first is, let's start with Jeffrey Nuccetelli, United States Air Force veteran who has quite the story. He was actually supposed to appear on this program on August 26th, but due to my own oversight and crazy schedule, it fell through. So I apologize to Jeff. Hope to get him rescheduled in the future, and I'm just really excited for him to tell his story, and you guys should be excited as well. So Jeff has been on the podcast circuit. He's done a few of them. He's one of the most talked about witnesses, and that's because he's connected to the famous Red Square incident that took place at the Vandenberg Air Force Base. So Jeff told his story on the UFO podcast and UAP files. So head over there if you want to see his full story before Tuesday, because it is quite the story. So what happened at Vandenberg Air Force Base? So Jeff witnessed, and I don't believe he was the only one, a glowing red square that was just silently hovering over a launch pad. Like, that's serious shit. A red square hovering in the sky above one of our launch pads. Like, that's serious shit. It was a structured craft, and remember, Vandenberg Air Force Base is extremely highly sensitive to the military. You don't just fly over that Air Force Base just for shits and giggles. What happened after that sighting? So Jeff has actually talked about it. He's talked about how frustrating it's been to track down official records of what happened. He said he tried to preserve, what documents he could preserve. But yeah, and there's going to be no shock here. He reported it to Arrow, who completely failed to follow up. I think at this point, Arrow should probably be disbanded and another committee put in its place that's going to investigate this issue with the right motives to get to the truth, no matter what the truth says. If the truth says these are all man-made craft and we're all UFO crazy people, then so be it. If it shows otherwise, that there is extraterrestrials or ultra-terrestrials or interdimensional things coming in, then tell us that too. We as the human race, we as the American people deserve the answers to those questions. And if our government is hiding the nature of reality from us, then, they should have hell to pay for it because we deserve to know. So getting off Arrow, I could talk about Arrow all day and how just completely frustrated I am with them. But so the Vandenberg Air Force incident, that was not the only incident that Jeff Nuccetelli had. So in 1994, I believe it was, he was in Japan with his family, and they saw glowing orbs in the sky. And again, you can head over to those podcasts that I mentioned to get the whole story, but it deeply affected not just him, but his family as well. So what do I expect Jeff to say in the hearing? What do I expect him to say to Congress? So I expect he's going to tell Congress in vivid detail, what happened during this incident. And I expect him, most importantly, to hammer home how the military has dropped the ball when it comes to investigating these incidents. We need better transparency on this, and the military, intelligence community, whoever, needs to be held accountable for how information gets shared. Because the overclassification of information is an epidemic at this point. So let's move on to the next hearing. Who's number 2 on our list? We have Chief Alejandro Wiggins. So who is Chief Wiggins? So he's from the United States Navy. He was a senior chief, which is pretty badass. Served more than 23 years in the Navy. And why is he testifying? So in 2023, Chief Wiggins was aboard the USS Jackson. So him and his crew reportedly observed 4 tic-tac-shaped craft. Now, this is the same type of object from the 2004 Nimitz encounter that David Fravor testified to at the last hearing. So Chief Wiggins' story, it's straightforward, but it's also very interesting. So what happened? So Chief Wiggins and some of his crewmates, they're on board the USS Jackson. They're looking radar, they're looking with their own eyes. What do they see? They see 4 tic-tacs behaving in ways that do not fit any conventional aircraft. Now, mind you, Chief Wiggins has 23 years in the United States Navy. He's a senior chief. I can all but guarantee you he has seen just about every type of flying object the Air Force and Navy have in their arsenal. So he would know if this is a conventional aircraft or anything in our arsenal at all. And he is going to testify that it is not. So, he's going to testify about that. I expect him to lay out the event very clearly, very articulate, and not only what he saw, but also what his crew saw. How the object was tracked on radar, what the command, no, I think this is the most important part of it, or along with how it was tracked, is what the command structure did afterwards. So the credibility here of Chief Wiggins is key. So, when a Navy senior chief with 2 decades of service testifies that he watched 4 unknown craft maneuvering in ways that we can't explain, Congress will have no choice but to listen. So that is Chief Wiggins. That's number 2 on our list. Moving to number 3, let's talk about Dylan Borland. So Dylan Borland, United States Air Force veteran with an intelligence background. So his name is newer to the public, but his resume is impressive. So Borland spent 3 years as a geospatial intelligence analyst. And that's a big deal if you're investigating UAP. These are the people that are investigating the information. So he did that for 3 years. He then moved into defense contracting. He worked at BAE, who was just an absolute giant in defense contractors, and then over to Intrepid Solutions and Services. So we haven't heard Dylan Borland on the podcast circuit yet, but just based on his career, I think his testimony is going to be less about any dramatic personal sightings and just more about the systemic side. Basically, how UAP data gets classified. And this goes to the heart of this whole thing, this whole conspiracy. How analysts are constrained by secrecy and why whistleblower protections are absolutely critical to this issue. So think of him as the insider who knows how the information pipeline works and where this information is getting bottled up and it's not making its way through the proper channels. It gets snatched, overclassified, never to be seen again. And I think Dylan will be in a perfect position to inform the Congress where exactly in the process this is happening. So that is going to be extremely important. So, this hearing, it's not just about strange lights in the sky. It's also about the machinery of secrecy. And I think Dylan is going to be able to paint a picture of how this conspiracy works from the inside. So that was our three. Who's our fourth witness for this hearing? None other than OG journalist George motherfucking Knapp. And I am extremely excited that George is testifying. I've looked up to him for a lot of years. As a kid watching Coast to Coast, but Art Bell, who's my idol, George Knapp was right there with Art, and he's been doing the work ever since. So I respect the hell out of George Knapp. And he's done a lot to bring us to where we are. Without George Knapp, I'm not sure if these hearings ever happened. So for those of you, if anybody's unfamiliar or you need a reminder, what did George Knapp do? So in the late 1980s, George Knapp broke the Bob Lazar story. He broke and exposed Area 51 in Nevada. It was huge news at the time, and it's still huge news. So again, he broke Area 51. He broke Bob Lazar. All the investigative work he's done in his journalism job, from investigating the mafia, casinos, and all kinds of other stuff. He is just a legitimate journalist. And he's also co-hosting the Weaponized podcast with Jeremy Corbell, which is just absolutely fantastic. So, George has been covering this issue for longer than a lot of us have been alive. And he's on record saying things like they're never going to give this up, meaning the intelligence community, the defense industry, the bureaucracy that is just entrenched in this 80-year covering. They're fighting disclosure at every turn. So what is George going to say? So I expect George is going to paint a bigger picture case for Congress, that the press, the public, and the lawmakers themselves are up against the culture of denial and suppression, which we all know is the truth. So I think George is going to get up there and he's going to call for systemic changes to how information is shared. And that is pivotal if we are ever going to get any kind of form of disclosure. The overclassification has to stop, and the way classified information is classified and then the way it is shared is pivotal to us finding out the truth. So I think George is going to argue that journalism and whistleblowers together, it's going to be the only way to break through this stone wall of I can never say that word. The stone wall of secrecy, obfuscation, but I can just never say that word for whatever reason. But I'm excited for George's testimony. I'm very happy for him. I think this will be, a feather in the cap of his legacy, and just, really happy for George. So those are our four witnesses. I'm excited to see what they're going to say. I'm excited to see what questions get asked, and how the momentum builds on this. So, now let's zoom out a little bit. So I see a lot of people on UFO Twitter, which is just a cesspool. I see a lot of people complaining and who the witnesses are, and just a million different lines of being bitter and negative. But, why does this hearing matter? Let's dive into that. So first, this hearing is meant to dive directly into UAP Whistleblower Protection Act. That's already been proposed. We need serious whistleblower protection. And if this momentum builds momentum for that, we can see legal safeguards that actually encourage more witnesses to step forward without fear of having their lives destroyed. So I just posted on my Twitter account yesterday. If you don't follow me on Twitter, UAP Reporting Center, follow me over there. I post daily updates of everything going on in UAP world. But I posted yesterday. So Representative Luna, who is knee deep in this issue, just said, she was talking to other witnesses that she was trying to get to testify at a different hearing, and they were afraid to come forward because they would be unalived, not by themselves, by other people. They were afraid of being unalived, basically by our government. That is just terrifying to think about. It's 2025, and we have witnesses afraid they're going to be assassinated by their own government if they come forward just to tell the truth. So this hearing is really going to matter to get protections in place for these people. And we have a nice different array of witnesses. I think this is the hearing with the widest array of different backgrounds. So we've got like dramatic eyewitness events from Nucatelli. We have a Navy operations perspective from Wiggins. We have an intelligence analyst view of the system with Borland. And we have a journalist who connects all the dots in George motherfucking Knapp. I think that combination just paints a fuller picture of the whole issue. And also more than past hearings. I think each hearing has its own purpose. I think the purpose of this hearing is to build momentum to get the Whistleblower Protection Act strengthened and passed. What kind of questions do you think Congress is going to ask? And not only what questions, but why are they asking certain questions? So I think we're probably going to hear things like, especially to Jeff Nucatelli, what exactly did you see and when? And the reason for asking a direct question like that is because they want detailed testimony on the congressional record. They want this on the record so then they can go forward and say, hey, here's what's going on, and this is why we need to do X, Y, Z. I think they're also going to ask, especially to Wiggins or Borland, were there official logs made of these encounters at the time? And I think that will be asked to basically expose whether data is being hidden. What is happening? We've heard before on the Nimitz encounter, people coming on the ship and swiping all the data from the Tic Tac. Is that kind of stuff happening? Where is the information going? Et cetera, et cetera. What else are they going to ask? So I think you're also going to hear probably Luna and others ask, were you pressured not to talk about this? Were you pressured by anyone in government or contractors to not come forward with your testimony? And I think that is going to go right to the heart of why this hearing is taking place, and that is to justify whistleblower protections. So I think you'll see that question asked quite a bit, different phrasings, but basically the same question. And then I also think, I think the representatives are going to also ask our witnesses, what recommendations do you have for us? And that's going to be a very important question, because the reason they're asking that is to set up legislative action, which is going to be extremely important. So I think some members are going to push really, really hard to make the most out of this hearing because they genuinely want transparency on this issue. I think others probably just want some headlines, and I think some others probably just want to say that they're tough on national security. So they're going to be there to try to take digs at the witnesses and just kind of make this issue seem not a big deal as we all know that it is. So I think that's going to be the lines of questioning. But these witnesses are going to put real details on the congressional record, and that's going to be extremely important. So now let's talk about the other side of this issue. So, what's the cover-up crowd thinking about all this? What is the cover-up crowd? How are they feeling that we're having another UAP hearing? multiple hearings in just a couple years, when we had maybe one before that in the last 50 years. Are they nervous, defensive? Are they getting pissed? So, it's going to make it difficult on them because, say Jeff Nuccetelli describes the Red Square in front of Congress. It's going to make it really hard for the Pentagon to just brush this off as a balloon. If Chief Wiggins calmly and articulately responds, how we saw 4 Tic Tacs while on active duty, it chips away at the narrative that there's nothing to see here. So we may see more pushback. We may see claims that, oh, these witnesses are mistaken. Releasing information would compromise national security, which we hear that a lot, and a lot of it is bullshit. Some may even take the old path of trying to discredit these witnesses personally. And I would bet that we are going to see stuff like that because it's still going on to David Grush. But here's the thing. The more they fight, the more it confirms, there's something there that's worth hiding. And that's what we need to find. We got to find that something. And this hearing is going to go a long way to answering those questions. So I know people, we want disclosure now. We want, show me the ships, show me the bodies. That would be great, but it doesn't work that way. So, this has been an 80-year fight. They're not going to show us the bodies or ships tomorrow. So we need to continue to have these hearings. We need to continue to put whistleblower protections in place so we can hear from perhaps witnesses who have worked on legacy programs. Maybe eventually we could hear from people like Dr. James Lakatsky, who literally was on the Weaponized podcast talking about how he actually accessed the inside of a craft. I mean, that's incredible. People like Com Kelleher, Jay Stratton, and so many others, Travis Taylor, that need to testify. If Congress needs to use subpoena power to get them to testify, to compel them to testify, that's what we need to do. But it's not going to happen tomorrow. We have to be patient. We have to be, eye of the tiger on this. And we just got to continue to push forward. And another important thing, we all need to stop dragging each other down so much. UFO Twitter, I spend so much time there, and I love all you guys on there. But we need to stop playing the gotcha game 24/7, trying to bring each other down. And, it's really hurting a unified effort to put pressure on government to give us the truth. So, I'm excited for the hearing. I think the hearing on September 9th has the potential to be a very important step forward in UAP disclosure. Like I was just saying, not because it's going to solve everything overnight, but because it brings together voices from the military, intelligence, and journalism, all on the same stage, and most importantly, under oath. So I'm going to be following it extremely closely. I'm going to break it all down for you right here. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss it. Will Congress actually push harder after this? Or will the secrecy machine tighten its grip more than ever on disclosure? Either way, we need to fight them tooth and nail for the truth. So, drop your thoughts in the comments, how you think the hearing is going to go. I love hearing what you guys have to say. So leave me a comment. Please hit like. Help us get this channel seen. Help us get the message out. And let's make this a community. So again, if you found this useful, like, subscribe. If you don't want to miss my reactions after the hearing, I'll be here. This could be a turning point, and let's see what happens on September 9th. So this has been Joe at the UAP Reporting Center. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.